Hey there, David Gordon from TheaterMania here with Larissa Bills, the director of the great new documentary series on Pointe on Disney+. It is, would you describe it as like a year in the life of New York City Ballet? Is that a fair, of the School of American Ballet rather? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, probably it should be a year interrupted in the School of American Ballet. The initial concept was to do the entire school year, but of course we all know it comes in March of 2020.
Right.
So we did retitle it a season, which is kind of appropriate too, because the New York City Ballet and companies usually do a season, and we sort of played off of that for the school.
Tell me about how did you figure this project out? Well, like how did you come into it? What was your interest?
My executive producer, Matt O'Neill, had a relationship with the School of American Ballet. There had been talk of doing something at some point with them over the years. And in, I think, late 2018, early 2019, the school was kind of ready to do that. And Matt and I were developing that project. We partnered with Imagine Documentaries, which is Ron Howard and Brian Grazer.
Right.
Their company, and their executive producers there. And they were the ones that took it to Disney+. So once we were greenlit from Disney+, we were able to kind of quickly go into production, knowing that we had wanted to capture a year in the life of the school and present that as, 6 hour-long shows or 6 40-minute shows, one way, shape, or form. Fortunately, we had these partnerships, which allowed us to really spend the time there.
Yeah. So the non-COVID revised version of the series, I guess, follows leading up to Nutcracker, which is their annual tradition, and the students getting ready for the Nutcracker, which almost it strikes me watching it as like that's almost more fertile territory than doing a full year, because it's just such an event here in New York City.
Absolutely. I mean, we knew that we always wanted to follow these younger kids going through that process, because there's a bit of mystery around it. I think up until this time, there had been a book about it called A Very Young Dancer, which had come out in like the early 80s, I think, that charted a young girl's journey becoming a cast in the Nutcracker. But we wanted to capture that. And of course, the older advanced students at the School of American Ballet don't perform in that. They are on their way to professional careers. So we had these sort of 2 tracks that we wanted to follow there, and we had to figure out how to weave that all together.
This is such a process question, but like, how do you, after you take hours and hours of footage, like how do you then turn that into a narrative thrust? Like, you do follow certain people throughout the show. Like, how do you decide on them?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, first of all, I have amazing editors. So I had a team of editors that were constantly combing through the footage. I was watching footage. My team was watching footage. And we sort of knew who some folks would be revealed as we were filming. So you could kind of tell certain storylines that were emerging just through the process of the filming. Certainly there was so much footage to go through, but what was great is that there is a linear process in the rehearsal, the casting, the rehearsal, and the performance of the Nutcracker. So to just follow that thread and see the characters that kind of pop in and out of that based on their casting, so that each children's role was sort of represented in that. And we knew that we were going to follow at least one child through each of those roles. That sort of gave us an initial structure to that storyline. But it was hundreds of hours. It literally was hundreds of hours, and a lot of effort to comb through and read transcripts and figure out, where that story was going to take us. It's very process heavy, but I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, I was going to say that must be a huge undertaking for you and your team of editors and creators.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I had some very experienced, really wonderful editors, one of whom had done a lot of work on dance films, particularly with New York City Ballet.
Oh, cool.
So they had some dance experience. They had not been a dance. That editor hadn't been a dancer, but they kind of knew how to capture that in a storytelling sense.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you, because you see so many like musicals today, and they don't know how to shoot like performance. They shoot from like head up, waist up, and ballet is such a full-bodied art form. Like,
yeah,
did you go into that with that in mind when you were shooting numbers?
absolutely. I watched a ton of films to just sort of understand how ballet was captured, what was good about it and what wasn't. And obviously the school has concerns about how the ballet is captured, and you can't editorialize it too much because the choreographer meant it to be presented as a full-bodied, in its entirety, unedited art form. So that was super challenging. But I'd watched films by Fred Weissman, who was a documentary filmmaker who had captured American ballet theater in a film called Ballet that came out in the 90s. I watched Bob Fosse's films to see how they did that, especially in terms of the editing, because I always thought Bob Fosse was an amazing editor, as well as everything else Bob Fosse did. So it was a lot of watching, learning, understanding what the choreography was so we could place ourselves and we could place our cameras and anticipate where the choreography was going to go in rehearsals and whatnot with the kids. And by the end of it, my whole team could probably do every single dance from the Nutcracker.
I was going to say, you guys must have been Nutcracker experts going in too, to even like have a baseline knowledge of it.
Yeah. I don't think anyone on the team was a particular ballet file. I really liked ballet and I understood it to some extent. I danced as a kid, but I didn't know all the nuances of it. And Balanchine choreography is so detailed and so quick. And it was really great to learn that in the process of making the film.
Have you heard from, since it's been on Disney Plus for just under a month now, it'll be a month next week. Have you heard from some of the subjects of the series? Like, have people that are in it watched it and gotten back and told you what they thought of it?
Yeah. I've gotten amazing feedback from the families that we focused on. The teachers, some of the teachers have gotten in touch with me and said that they were incredibly grateful that we've actually put something out into the world that doesn't fall upon the typical ballet movie cliches, which I think, I appreciate those cliches to some extent. I like Black Swan, and I see there's this new Netflix series and it's always got an element of backstabbing and drama. And we really, it was my intent and hope that we could show what was going on in this place, which is really just great kids being really good at something really beautiful. And I thought that was really important, and it coincided with Disney's mission, I think, of how they wanted to present their programming as well, which was great.
I was going to say, I really like it from an educational perspective, but also like watching it during the holidays and knowing that there's no Nutcracker this year. It was just nice to see that tradition being given to the world at large that was watching this.
Absolutely. It's bittersweet, but I do appreciate that now, my young nephews and nieces can see this, and they're out west and they're not going to necessarily get to New York City Ballet, or, folks that can't necessarily afford a ticket to see the Nutcracker can see it in some portion online or on Disney Plus. So that was great, and that it reached a broader audience.
Do you feel like you have unfinished business? Like, do you feel like you want to do a full season at New York City Ballet next? Do you want to?
I mean, I can't give it up exactly. I think one of the things we really missed was seeing the advanced students perform their spring workshop, which is a big deal for the school. It's sort of their prom, their graduation, their showcase. It's everything they perform it at the theater at Juilliard. And a lot of those students are going to go on to professional careers with New York City Ballet or other companies around the world. And I was really looking forward to capturing that, just in a different sense from how the Nutcracker process went. But I definitely would love to continue that if the opportunity arose.
Well, until then, we have On Point on Disney Plus, and I highly encourage everyone to watch it. It's really lovely, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, and be well, everybody. Take care.